the land remembers what they tried to bury. The creek was never dead. They just forced it underground, like everything else in this cursed neighborhood. I didn't plan to flood 35 homes. I planned to reclaim what was stolen. The HOA called it expansion. I called it trespass. They didn't ask. They didn't negotiate. They rolled in with cement trucks and backhoes, waving papers signed by people I never met, on land my family had owned since the Civil War. Not rented. Not borrowed. Owned. But this isn't a story about property lines. It's about control. Because HOAs aren't just community groups, they're modern feudal lords. Cloaked in bylaws, reinforced with attorneys, and funded by forced dues. And when they wanted my land, they didn't just buy it. They rewrote maps. Rezoned districts. And falsified records so clean it made truth look like a conspiracy. I used to think the enemy wore suits in Washington. Turns out, he wears polos and drives a golf cart. And when I fought back, they laughed. Said I didn't have the permits to defend myself. Imagine that, needing permission to say no. But they didn't know what was buried beneath the community center. Didn't know the old dam was still there. Didn't know the old waterway still pulsed beneath the ground, silent, patient, waiting. While they built wine cellars and installed granite countertops. I studied their rules like scripture. I waited for a dry summer. And I remembered the lock combination passed down by my grandfather, who warned me. Never open the floodgate, unless they forget who owns this valley. They forgot. And when that day came, the gate opened with a sound like judgment. And the water remembered. Do you feel it yet? This isn't just a feud. It's a war between false order and forgotten ownership. They'll tell you it's about community safety. They'll say we're protecting property value. But what they're really saying is, you don't own what you thought you owned. And if that doesn't shake you, you haven't looked deep enough. Because behind every mailbox, behind every lawn code, behind every architectural review committee, is a machine that feeds on submission. And the second you say no, it begins to dismantle your life. They thought they could make me disappear quietly. Instead, they're treading water in what used to be my orchard. And now that you've heard the opening crack of the dam, you need to decide. Are you just another homeowner with a lawn to mow? Or are you the last line between history and erasure? Most men think tyranny wears boots. They expect it to kick in their door, wear a badge, or come waving a flag. But here? It slides across your welcome mat with a clipboard. Smiles at your wife. Then finds you for a flower pot. You think I'm exaggerating. But let me show you how deep the HOA blueprint goes. It starts simple: community cohesion, property value protection, shared aesthetics. But peel back the layers, and you'll find something older. Darker. These organizations are modeled after Cold War social control experiments. No, not just metaphorically, literally. Surveillance disguised as neighborliness. Enforcement disguised as civic responsibility. Isolation disguised as privacy. Ever wonder why the bylaws are vague but punishments are precise? Why they can fine you for a fence color but ignore when their board president builds a deck without permits? Because order is not the goal. Compliance is. And once they build on your land, or install a gate you didn't approve, or demand dues for amenities you don't use, you realize you're not a resident. You're a controlled asset. I watched them do it to my neighbors. One man put up a basketball hoop, he was fined $150 a day. A woman painted her door red to honor her heritage, they forced her to repaint it colonial slate. And when an old veteran let his grass grow during chemo, they sued him into foreclosure. This isn't about beauty. This is about breaking men down until they ask for permission to breathe. And the worst part? Most don't even notice. Because comfort is a sedative. And bureaucracy is the needle. By the time they built those 35 homes on my land, the process had been rehearsed 100 times. Invent a development need. Zone it emergent. File a quiet title. Call it progress. Silence the resistance. And they almost did. But I wasn't raised in suburbs. I was raised in floodplains. And my father taught me something most board members have never felt. What the land gives you, the land can take back. This is bigger than a waterline dispute. This is a story about how systems pretend to serve you, while feeding on your obedience. And if you think you're safe because you follow the rules, you've already surrendered. Because these rules change. And they were never meant to protect you. They exist to test your threshold. To see how much you'll take before you snap. And when you finally do, you're labeled aggressive, unstable, non-compliant. Sound familiar? That's because this isn't just about HOAs. It's about soft tyranny. Perfected behind cul-de-sacs and picket fences. And you need to decide. Are you living in a home? Or inside a machine? Control always starts with language. The HOA doesn't say obey. They say comply. They don't punish. They enforce. They don't rule. They govern. But governance without consent is just domesticated tyranny, and most men sleepwalk right into it. Let me show you how it works. You move into a nice neighborhood. Clean lawns, trimmed hedges, smiling neighbors. You sign a 70-page packet without reading it because the realtor says, it's just standard. Then one day you leave your garbage can out past 7 p.m. A warning arrives. Next time, a fine. And just like that, the conditioning begins. Pavlov had his bell. The HOA has your mailbox. Your brain rewires around avoidance. Don't park there. Don't paint that. Don't speak up. Don't stand out. And each time you obey, you reinforce the loop. If I just play nice, they'll leave me alone. But they never do. Because this isn't about rule following, it's about power training. And the goal is simple. Make you so self-conscious you pre-censor your own freedom. You start landscaping for approval, not beauty. You start decorating for optics, not soul. You mow the lawn not because you love it, but because you fear the ticket. And when that fear becomes reflex, they've won. But here's the twist. The board members? They're not masterminds. They're addicts. Addicted to petty authority. Addicted to the thrill of telling another man, no. Addicted to using policy as a weapon while hiding behind the shield of procedure. You ever seen a grown man giddy because he got to deny someone's driveway extension? I have. That's when I knew. This isn't a community. This is a laboratory. And we're the test subjects. Every violation notice is a microdose of subjugation. Every forced repaint is an erasure of identity. Every architectural committee is a thought policing board in khakis. But here's where it gets dangerous. Because once you wake up, once you see the invisible wires, you become a threat. They don't want compliant citizens waking up. They want predictable patterns. So the moment you resist, they isolate you. Suddenly, your neighbors stop waving. Rumors start. You get flagged at meetings. They call you disruptive. They use the oldest psychological weapon in the world. Shame. But shame only works if you believe you're guilty. That's when I stopped apologizing. That's when I stopped asking for understanding. That's when I unlocked the dam. And now I want you to wake up. Right now. If you're still watching, you're one of us. You're not average. You're not asleep. So comment this phrase twice below to mark your awakening. Old key, I own the land, old key. Old key, I own the land, old key. Let the algorithm see it. Let the control systems see it. Let you see it. Because what they took from me, they're planning to take from you. And in section 4, you'll see exactly how deep the roots go. Continue? There's a reason HOAs feel older than they are. A reason the bylaws read like scripture. A reason enforcement feels sacred, not civic. Because these neighborhoods weren't built just to house families. They were built to house control. Disguised as safety, order, and pride. You see, behind every HOA is a set of documents most residents never read. The master deed. The covenants and restrictions. The community charter. Sounds official, right? But what you're really looking at is a spell book. Not in a fairy tale sense. In the bureaucratic sense, ritual law, binding contracts, symbolic language that converts the idea of community into a private jurisdiction. Think about it. Why do HOAs get to enforce rules with court-level authority? Fine you like a government. And lien your home like a bank. Without being elected by the people they rule? Because when you bought your house, you didn't just buy a home. You entered a private agreement. And in that agreement, you surrendered more than you understood. The HOA isn't public. It's corporate. Privately governed. Privately funded. Privately enforced. And what makes it worse? Most HOAs are managed by third-party companies that answer to no one but the board. Which often means a small group of unelected locals controls your life with zero transparency. Ancient lords wore crowns. Modern ones hold meeting minutes. And those meeting minutes? They're the ritual scrolls of the HOA system. Where 3 people decide if your kid's treehouse is a visual nuisance. And can vote to fine you $500 for architectural noncompliance. No appeal. No due process. No mercy. Because mercy isn't part of the system. Predictability is. Uniformity is. Enforced peace is. HOAs don't want peace through mutual respect. They want peace through domestication. And if you don't believe me, ask yourself. Why do so many of these bylaws date back 40, 50, even 70 years? Why are the original documents stored in bank vaults, never updated? Why are certain rules, like no vegetable gardens in front yards or no home businesses, so eerily specific? Because these documents were born from a different era. An era of redlining, exclusion, segregation. And the quiet enforcement of elitist control through polite paperwork. They don't call it that anymore. They call it preserving neighborhood character. But what they really mean is preserving the illusion of control. And if you think you're immune because you pay your dues, you're wrong. Because someday, someone on the board won't like your car, or your cousin staying the weekend, or the political flag in your garage window. And suddenly, you'll meet the real face behind the smiling HOA president. And it won't be friendly. It won't be neighborly. It'll be cold, corporate, and carved in law older than your mortgage. But now you see it. Now you know. And if you've made it this far, you're not just a viewer anymore. You're a witness. And in Section 5, you'll see how the war ends. Not with signatures. Not with speeches. But with a reckoning. They built 35 homes on my land. Not beside it. On it. And when I protested, they didn't fight me. They erased me. Told me the land was abandoned. Told me the deed was expired. Told me my name didn't match the new records. They paved my father's orchard. Built driveways over my great-grandfather's burial site. And installed speed bumps over the creek that once fed our entire valley. But they made one mistake. They built over the old floodgate. Buried it in concrete and forgetfulness. Assuming it was part of a forgotten system. They were right. It was forgotten. But I remembered. I remembered the stories. The warnings. The key hidden in the stone wall. The rusted lever that still worked if you pulled it with enough hate in your bones. And I remembered what my grandfather said. The day they tried to force him off the land. One day they'll forget who really owns this place. When they do, make the water remember. That summer, the rains didn't come. The soil cracked. The lawns browned. The HOA issued water restrictions to preserve community aesthetics. But what they didn't know was that the dam beneath them, the one they forgot existed, was still holding back a river of history. And on the hottest day of the year, while their board met to discuss mailbox heights and garage lighting, I opened it. It wasn't a flood. It was a correction. Water roared through the underground channel, cracked their sidewalks, lifted their SUVs, swallowed their manicured lawns, and shattered their illusion of control. No one died. I made sure of that. But the homes? They paid. Insurance called it a natural event. The HOA called it an act of God. But I called it justice. Because what they built wasn't a neighborhood. It was a lie. And lies, no matter how neatly landscaped, can't hold back truth forever. And here's what you need to understand, brother. You're not just buying property. You're entering a psychological battlefield. Every covenant is a leash. Every rule is a test. Every letter in your mailbox is a reminder that freedom ends at the curb. Unless you fight. Unless you resist. Unless you remember who you are. They want you docile. Want you grateful for comfort. But real men. Men who still bleed truth. Don't bow to board votes and budget meetings. They reclaim. They resist. And when the time comes, they open the dam. So let me ask you. What's buried under your neighborhood? What's been paved over in your soul? And when the time comes, will you pull the lever? Because some wars aren't fought with rifles. Some are fought with water, memory, and a refusal to kneel. Old Key, I own the land. Old Key, I own the land. Remember it. Write it. Live it. You are not a resident. You are a force of history. And the next time they come for your piece of ground, make them remember.